So welcome everybody. This is our breakout for the revised criteria 2020 and draft system improvements for 2020 through 2022. Very technical name for a very complicated subject, and we're excited to hear what you guys think about the presentation that was given earlier today by, you'll see some of the folks here, by HepKitten and Dilemma, and Spacious and Ratchet and Catnip, and that came from a larger group as well who we'll introduce in a moment. I'm Trippi Longstocking. Nice to see all of you. I was the former placement manager, and now I'm an associate director doing all kinds of things at Burning Man Project. I want to introduce Monday. Monday, do you want to spotlight yourself and say hi?
Hi, I'm Monday. I'm on the placement team. I will be doing your technology stuff for the next 90 minutes.
Yes, so Monday is the person to message. You can message him privately or in general, and he'll kind of be keeping us on track with everything. So thank you, Monday, for helping us out today. I just want to quickly go over some Zoom etiquette so that everyone's on the same page about how to make this a good experience. A couple things. We ask if you're not speaking to always be muted, always be muting. That way we don't have any background noise or weirdness come through. So, and if you do have weird background noise coming through, then Monday will mute you for you. So don't be alarmed if that happens. You can turn on your video if you'd like us to see your lovely face. You go to the bottom left corner of your screen and you click the big start video button. And if you're fancy and have a newer computer, unlike me, you can click the up arrow next to your video and you can click choose a virtual background, and then you can make a cool background like some people who you see have already done that. And if you want to rename yourself, maybe you have your default world name popping up there and you'd rather use your playa name, or maybe you want to add your camp name or where you're calling in from. When you see yourself, your own little picture, you just click the little dot, dot, dot in the upper right-hand corner that will appear next to the mute button, and then you'll see rename. You can also do this if you click participants at the very bottom, and then you'll see yourself at the top. And when you hover over your name, you'll see a rename button, and you can rename yourself there to whatever you like. And wow, we have 78 and growing number of people showing up. So hi, everybody. I'm Trippi. Nice to see you. Final bit of Zoom etiquette. So the way we'll take this session is really going to be about your guys' questions and comments, and then the folks from the cultural direction setting group responding and giving you guys more insight or answers, or we don't know, depending on the situation. So we're going to do a lot of back and forth. The way we're going to manage that is if you would like to raise your hand, as in I would like to speak, I would like to ask a question, I have a comment to make, what you're going to do instead of raising your hand is you're going to type the number 1 in the chat. Make sure it's to everyone so that we can see, and then we can take a stack of who's going to speak. And then Monday, with his hostly powers, can make your face the big face so that everyone sees you when you ask a question. And if you really don't want to be seen, you can also just type in the chat what your question is, and Monday or myself will read your question out loud. I see Michael mentioning the raise hand function. We're not going to use that just because we can't tell the order in which it happened, and we want to keep a nice queue of people so we can go in the right order. So do write the number 1 in the chat to raise your hand, and then we'll go through the order. I think that's all I have in terms of Zoom etiquette. If you have any Zoom questions, please put them in the chat, and we can make sure that happens and get you your answers. So with that, we are here today to talk about the revised camp placement criteria. It just went out on Thursday and was live on the website yesterday, so it's hot off the presses. Hopefully you've gotten a chance to read it and somewhat digest it. And we're also going to talk about the draft system improvements that the group presented during the plenary earlier today. I do have the slides, and Level actually posted the slides on the website if you need a refresher at any point. I'll just drop the link in here so you can see all of our cultural direction setting slides. And since you've already seen the presentation, or if you're just tuning in now, you can look at those slides to see what was presented in the middle section there. We're going to spend most of the time hearing from you. So first off, though, I do want to introduce the amazing people who have been working on this since September, meeting every single week, every Wednesday night for a long time. And we're just going to go around and they're going to say their name, a little bit about them in the Burning Man world. And then I've asked them to also share just briefly one moment, one insight, one memory, one little bit of, behind the scenes from the experience we've had together as a group or in cultural direction setting in general. So we're going to do that first. Then we're just going to kind of move through. We're going to first focus on the criteria, the new updated criteria, and hear your comments and questions there. And then we're going to switch gears and focus on the draft system improvements. We do have someone taking notes of the questions that you guys are asking, and we've also are recording the session. And then finally, we'll close out with appreciations at the end. So that's all I've got to start us off. I'm going to kick it to do introductions, and I'm going to pick on Skidoo, if you don't mind going first, introducing yourself. And Monday, if you don't mind spotlighting Skidoo.
Hey, I am Skidoo. I was in this group, and we've been meeting weekly since last burn. And it's been really enriching experience to share different perspectives and to come into a middle place with different polarities in those perspectives. It's been an amazing process. And so I'm from the placement team. I was camp lead in 3907 and Plentyground, and it's good to be here.
Do you want to pick who goes next from our group?
Sure, HepKitten.
Hi, I'm HepKitten. I'm on the placement team, and I also volunteer for Gate, Perimeter, and Exodus, and I'm also on the leadership team of my theme camp, so I wear a bunch of different hats when I'm on Playa, but mostly placement beforehand. Obviously part of group 2 as well. And one of the things that I have found really fun and enriching has been just getting to know my fellow group mates. I knew the other placers obviously before this happened, but the relationships that the bond that we've formed over all this stuff and the arguments, and it's been a really because it's arguments, but it's always like arguments that are really well reasoned or like everybody listens to each other. It's not like an argument, but like more like a constructive talk, which has been really, really cool. And I will pick hot water.
Hi everybody, I'm Hot Water. I have been burning since 2012. I started with a small theme camp on the 9 o'clock plaza, a Barbarella shop, and I've been on the placement team since 2016. It's been an incredible experience to be part of this process. I would say probably one of the most moving moments for me was when we had one of our first work weekends in November of last year. And we had been meeting as our little subgroup, group 2, for weeks up to that point. And so it felt big and it felt important. And, we were doing the things, but there was something about being in that physical space. And I think there was like over 40, 50 people there, all part of different subgroups. And I think that was the first time where I really grokked the immensity of what we were doing and how many voices we were bringing into the table that had never been part of this process before. And that just felt so exciting to me and so motivating, and I just feel like it's been such a privilege to be part of this process. Dilemma, I'll pick you to go next.
Why, thank you. And I have to say, on Dilemma, Paradise Motel, and camp support, also helped put on the theme camp symposium with Candy Ass and Level. Working with Hot Water was really interesting because we would spend our Saturdays, because we had nothing better to do, and I had taken notes and different things that were jotted down in 5 different documents where people had written up criteria and mushed them into one document. And then we just basically wordsmith through there, and we would spend an hour on one sentence and pick apart every word. And we had the SARS.com open, and we thought, well, have we thought about this type of camp, or we have thought about this type of situation? And the process we'd go through for a may, a should, a must, and what needs to be in there. And then we take it and have the placers look at it, and then they mark it all up with lots of things they want to change, and it would look like a mess. And we'd take their stuff and we'd be grumbling about it. And then we got done with it, it's kind of better. And then we had some diversity folks look at it as a diversity angle, and we're like, oh yeah, we really should have included some of this. And then some of the phase 0 folks, the folks that have been doing Burning Man since time began, took a look at it, and they had their own input. So there's from the original looking at the survey results and trying to distill things and taking lots of ideas from lots of people, there's a lot of people's work and ideas in this document. So I'm thankful for all the folks that somehow had a hand in crafting it. And I can't see anyone.
Can go to Catnip, Ratchet, Spacious.
Oh, Catnip.
Hi, I'm Catnip. I'm the camp lead at Beats and Deets, and I'm a long-time player info volunteer as well. My first burn was in 2011, which kind of ironically was the first year that tickets sold out, but they sold out in July, so it was kind of like no biggie. So I've seen that play out. I've been back every year since. I've done kind of everything from open camping to theme camp leading, a lot of things. My major takeaway from the group goes back to the really early days when part of our homework was to do a really big deep dive into the survey results. And going through the survey kind of line by line was really interesting, because the thought and passion and nuance that most people brought to their responses was like an incredible thing. And they were passionate and thoughtful and balanced, and they kind of accepted that sometimes trade-offs are needed, and getting those trade-offs right is hard. And it kind of just reminded me that the community that, we're trying to do this work almost on behalf of is a thoughtful and really worthwhile community. And we hope to share some of that today. Ratchet.
Sorry, my laptop decided to go out and fritz on me. Hi, my name is Ratchet. I am a theme camp lead with Mudskipper's Urban Decay Cafe in the 730 sector. I crew on the Icarus Art Car. I hang out with the Atoll crew, otherwise known as Orgy Dome, a lot. So I've really seen the theme camp world and the art car world from a lot of different perspectives. Yeah, this process has been a really amazing synthesis for me of so many different worlds coming together. The small theme camps with giant villages, the long-standing 15-year plus placers with brand new members of the team. And I think the most memorable parts of it for me have been those tension points where we really had to grapple with something. I mean, this wasn't an easy process of, oh yeah, let's just throw some more words on a piece of paper. There were a lot of intense conversations around, like, what does something mean? What does a word mean? How do we construe it in the right way? And I'm just really proud of the process that our team had of coming together to really, I think, land in a place that's really beautiful. And I think the last person to go is Spacious.
Hello, I'm Spacious from Washington, D.C. I instigate CampContact and lead Anahasana Village. I've been burning since 2004, and I started leading CampContact in 2007 at Playa del Fuego, one of the regionals, and so I would go to a lot of regionals as well. And as part of this process, I think the most interesting thing to me was getting to know the placers and hearing all the different things that they have to do, and the dedication that they have throughout the time when all of the placement questionnaires arrive through to getting on playa and getting camps placed and all the rest. And it's been really eye-opening to see just how much happens in that and so forth. So I think that's it.
Thank you, Spacious, and welcome to the folks who have just arrived. We have over 100 people here, so hello, hello, hello. And I'm Trippi. As part of my role for this group, I was the facilitator each week for this group. And the two folks who were not here today, who were also part of this effort, Level was a part of this group, our beloved placement manager, and then Hazmat, who is the, what is his title now? Associate Director of Business Services. He's a DPW council member, and so he deals with contracts and, you know, vendors for Burning Man project and kind of all that kind of stuff. So that's his role. So just a quick rundown of our agenda for the folks who've just arrived. We just finished introductions. Next, we're just going to open it up. We're going to talk about first the criteria, the updated camp placement criteria that just went on the website on Thursday/Friday. We're going to spend some time on that first, and then we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about the draft system improvements that were presented during the plenary session by this group. So I'll switch our gears at that point. Really happy to have everyone. If you would like to chime in with your question, your comment, you can type the number 1 into the chat. That way Monday can find you easily and spotlight your video. And if you don't want to be videoed, you don't want to ask your question live, just type your question into the chat or type your comment into the chat, and Monday or myself will read it out loud. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over. Who wants to talk about the new camp placement criteria that just came out? And please, we want to hear everything, the good, the concerns, you know, everything in between. And this is an iterative process. That's part of why we're here today, is to hear your feedback. So fire away. I see Jason is up first.
Hi, everybody. I run Post-Nuclear Family, and I have the Sensitron. And I've been running a theme camp at Burning Man for about 15 years. Post-Nuclear Family is 11 years old now, and I started another camp called Transmorphagon with a few friends. I love what you guys are doing with the cultural direction in terms of making sure that turnkey camps don't come in and sort of have an expectation of, I'm just here to party and go out. But one of the things that I'm concerned about is that a lot of the language, such as having schedules for scheduled interactivity, can kind of convert camps into a series of. So I just wanted to raise that question and also that concern and discuss it with all y'all.
So who from CDS wants to take that one up? Hi, Jason.
Hi, Trippi.
I can't see folks all the way. So if someone from CDS wants to, oh, HepKitten says she missed the operative word. The operative word was schedules. So asking camps for schedules.
Right, sorry, I heard that part. I didn't hear, it was like schedules and then there was something after that. I heard there's a concern about the schedules and what that would cause. And I didn't, like there was like one word in the middle of that I was like, I can't hear that. So I can't really answer the question because I don't know what it is. My computer went all slow and whatever, pixelated.
Jason, do you want to?
Sure. Go ahead and bring me back. Yeah, if you want to, am I on now? I can't hear myself.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. So yeah, my concern is that scheduled interactivity works really well for planning things. It makes a lot of sense from a standpoint of what are you going to do? What are you going to bring? How are all of your members going to participate? And for me, as a theme camp organizer, one of my concerns is that I want to make a space for people to participate on their own terms. And when we have schedules, I've noticed at some camps, there kind of becomes a, are you on the schedule? That's not my, it's not my role right now. I'm going to go out and party. I'll come back and do the dishes later. All those kinds of things, those efficiency plans really work, especially for like a military operation. But for the weirdness that is Burning Man, it would just be good to kind of keep that space, an allowance for those outlier camps that don't necessarily fit into basically creating a theme mall kind of aspect. And I'm sorry to use that sort of language, but that's the, I don't mean to be hyperbolic. I just mean to say that that's what it could lead to. That's a watchword for me.
Or Trippi, I think I can take this if that's okay with everybody else. For me, I know that a big thing that we were working on when we did criteria and what we've been talking about in the placement team altogether has been, we call that like the spontaneous happenings. as opposed to like the scheduled happenings, because that's one of the things that we were really trying to focus on and trying to make sure that we left space for, because those spontaneous things that happen are things that are really truly make Burning Man what Burning Man is. It's not necessarily, I mean, there's some great scheduled stuff, don't get me wrong, but like those things that you come across that are just kind of like out of the blue and like off the cuff are really cool. So we try to leave space for that. And I believe there's some language in the criteria, either Dilemma or Hot Water can speak to that more than I can, because they were neck deep in that for the last 4 weeks, I think, doing the language. But it is something that we have considered. It is something that if you read through all the criteria, I know is really, really long now, but it's part of why we're trying to give guidelines of things like that, you know, we want there to be space for that. We want there to be space for, you know, Burning Man to happen, and not just, we don't want it to be the real world. So, I think that's, I mean, does that answer your question?
This is Dilemma. I pasted that section of the criteria into the chat that talks about interactivity can be scheduled or spontaneous, which we did talk a lot about whether or not to include that, and we did.
Thanks, guys. I want to ask Monday to read out the next question because my Zoom crashed for a second, so I lost the chat. We had a question typed in.
Yeah, this was from Wigwam. The question is cultural direction setting working towards continuing to build neighborhoods within sectors?
I'll say that there is a separate group that's called Strengthening Our Neighborhoods that's specifically looking at like peer-to-peer, how camps can support each other in making amazing neighborhoods. So there's both a placement angle to this, and then there's a, you know, camps to camps level of this. So does someone want to speak to one of those angles from our group? No? I think I'll just say that I think from a placement perspective, when placement is mapping the city, we do think about the neighborhoods that we're creating. You know, neighborhoods might kind of bleed into each other a little bit, but we do look at it from that angle. And then I would encourage you to engage with group number 7 in cultural direction setting, who's specifically looking at strengthening our neighborhoods and how we can do that better. And then next up we have Allison. I think you gotta unmute yourself, Allison.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So we are a camp that lost a big percentage of our DGS entries this year. And a big part of that is because I feel like our camp is a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. We gift flights in ultralight and gyro aircraft over the playa. So I think it's like an incredibly unique and a really beautiful gift. It obviously cannot take place at our camp because we're flying planes. So it takes place at the airport. So we got dinged for not being interactive at our camp, but we're interactive every single day at the airport. We're offering a really amazing gift, I think, you know, if I do say so myself. It's not an easy gift. They're expensive equipment. They're not easy to get to the playa. We're out there every day flying people, and yet we're being told that we have to have interactivity at our camp. So we went from 20 DGS tickets to 6. And so I'm just wondering how a camp like ours, like we should be treated more like a mutant vehicle camp or an art support camp, I feel like, because we're offering interactivity. We do offer some interactivity at camp, but the bulk of it is out at the airport. So I'm wondering how that might be viewed from a cultural direction setting perspective, and who might be the best, you know, group for us to talk to about our situation.
I'm happy to address, I guess, the broader principles behind that and how they came up in the context of the Group 2 discussion. So one of the things that we discussed very specifically was how do you treat interactivity that happens outside the camp? And that fits into a broad things that include how do you treat camps that have a lot of people who do a lot of volunteering outside the camps? You know, do you get brownie points for that? Don't you get brownie points for that? And it's difficult because, you know, going back to volunteering as an example, sure, you want to encourage those things. Sure, we want people to leave camp and do cool things outside of camp. Yet, equally, there were two problems on the other side that constantly kept coming up, which were, one, how do you, and I'm going to use this word because I don't have a better one right now, enforce that? So, you know, when a camp comes and says to you, yeah, look, we didn't do the grilled cheese thing we said we were going to do, but, you know, we did it on the trash fence instead. I mean, like, how do you know? But more importantly, part of this is that we need to keep the city vibrant. And if the city just turns into the suburbs because everyone's doing their shit somewhere else, then the city as a city kind of fails. I think along that journey, one of the things that we have found is that there are a lot of essentially hybrid camps. And if you just look at them through kind of one of the lenses, they're not great. But if you look at them through a different one and add all the bits up, they probably are. But as we stand now, the process for adding all the bits up doesn't work very well. And, you know, maybe that's one of the things that you guys struggled with a bit. Does one of the places want to chip in on that one?
I can try unless Hep or Hot Water or Skidoo wants to. HepKitten's waving at me.
I'm happy to. I'm one of those people who talks a lot, so I don't want to take all the space, as you said. So I'm trying not to, but feel free to call on me. I'm happy to answer most of these questions, Trippi. I'm just trying to give space. You know, my thought,
this one.
Yeah, my thought for this is that gifting flights is an amazing thing. There's a lot of amazing things that happen outside of theme camps, but when we're looking through questionnaires, we're looking at what happens specifically inside the lines of your theme camp, because we want to know that that's a space that's not going to be dark with nothing happening, because every dark space means that people aren't going to walk down that block to see the camp next to them. So it's something that we actually do consider. That said, we are, as Catnip said, we are starting to consider how to treat camps like yours and other camps that are doing something amazing, but just not within their theme, like not within the lines of their space. So we've been talking about trying to figure out a way to basically place camps like yours, because they are contributing something amazing to the city, but not designate you as a theme camp, because it shouldn't be a theme camp because you don't have the interactivity in your camp. So we're talking about that. We don't really have a solution at the moment.
I can share some of the draft solutions.
Off the top of, yeah, go
Sorry.
ahead.
Well, yeah, I think there's two things going on around it. One is there's a group in cultural direction setting called support camps, and they were tackling the hybrid camp issue. And the current working draft proposal, which is looking pretty strong, is that we would next year, so not for 2020, this would be for 2021, really change the way we designate camps on the questionnaire itself. So instead of saying you're a theme camp, you're an art support camp, you're a mutant vehicle camp, we take a bottom-up approach and we say, okay, you have a population of 100 people. 75 of them are doing the theme camp thing and the board's your camp. 10 of them are rangering their hearts out, and that's what they're doing the whole time. And another, 15 are doing their mutant vehicle thing. And so we can kind of build bottom up. Right now, the way our system works, doing that would be an absolute nightmare. Like, you don't want to come behind the scenes and see that, your eyes will pop out. So we really have to rebuild the whole system in order to do that well, because it affects things like work access passes, it affects things like DGS the following year, like it's got so many tendrils to it. So we're looking at that direction. The other thing that is actually happening this year, and is on the website now, is what we're calling a department service camp. These are few and far between, and the way they came up actually was looking at a camp like BED, the Bureau of Erotic Discourse, who used to kind of tuck themselves into other camps, but we had an issue where we're like, they're not really a theme camp, because what they do is they go to other camps and they do consent training and activations. And so, but there's some stuff going on in their camp, but that's not really what they do. And so them and a couple other camps kind of became our test case for, they're really attached to something that the Burning Man Project or a department within Black Rock City is doing. And we want to be able to support them. and in providing a service to the whole city, which is why we're calling them department service camp, kind of like how Playa Info is a service to the whole city. These camps are of a similar nature. So I would encourage you to talk to the airport, because you and Burning Sky, for instance, might fit more like that than a traditional theme camp. So that's brand new, hot off the presses on the website. So we have a little queue forming, so I'm gonna keep on top of it. So we're gonna ask a question that Matt Kanzer wrote in, then we're gonna go to Little Jack, then we're gonna go to Erica, then we're gonna go to Nanako, and then we're gonna go to Charlie, and then Insight. So I'm gonna read Matt's question out loud. Matt's question was, I would love to hear more about proportionality to camp size. We all share the value of participation, and we try to ensure everyone has a role to play. But besides camp size, what about other camp features, like how far we have to travel to bring our physical gear or our financial ability? So who wants to jump in on proportionality to camp size and things beyond camp size, like travel, distance, financial ability?
This is a dilemma. I'd like to take a crack at that one.
Go for it.
There are certain areas of the criteria that I'm going to paste in here. One is, you mentioned proportionality, and I put that section in there. And this is something that Hot Water and I spent a lot of time crafting this, trying to explain it. There was several things that we're trying to say about proportionality here and other places. One of the ones is that it should take a meaningful amount of your camp's time contributing to the interactivity. So you shouldn't have some people that are doing all the work and then other people that are like guests at your hotel sort of situation going on. I think something else that fits into that is we added a phrase here around the uniqueness, and I think folks should take a look through all of the uniqueness, but one of the things we said that camps that welcome, support, and create interactivity for underrepresented groups or people at Burning Man are especially desired. And some of the camps that we were thinking about there are some sober camps that are very important to people on the playa. There are camps that are particular group that isn't underrepresented. And it's important to have those there. But, and the last part of your question was, I'm gonna try to read it again. Sorry.
It was around camp size and proportionality, travel distance, and financial ability.
So I don't know about the travel distance. Catnip probably has to deal with that more than anyone else coming from Australia. But we did add some language in there around making your camp accessible. I don't know how you would. I don't know how you would figure in, bonus points for having come extra mileage. We don't.
Well,
have
one of the conversations, and we very explicitly had this conversation, and I remember it because it came up around signage, and it was the conversation we were having about we want camps to have good signage. It's obvious that they're a theme camp, blah 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 blah. And I said in the context of that conversation that staging a camp from Sydney, Australia, signage is actually one of my biggest problems. And, our sign, which is nothing flash, was literally made spending 2 days with sawhorses and cordless power tools, making it in the car park at Reno. And I think where we left that is there's a lot of words around people not ticking. You don't have to tick every box. It's kind of like, tell us your story and fit it into this broader narrative. And for me personally, and maybe, I'm now taking off the group 2 hat on and putting the theme camp lead hat on, my placement questionnaire will say, just the heads up here, it'll say, visual stimulation, frontage, signage. Our signage is not that great. That's because we stage from Australia. We're really doing the best that we can, and we try to make it up in other ways. And, I think the criteria that we've drafted, and having worked with places and knowing how they think and operate, it's a really holistic approach. And the more of that narrative you can share, the more it's appreciated. You know, I don't think in a kind of, you know, drafting rules sense, you can get down to that level of granularity. But I think people can rest assured that if you tell your story, the story as a whole gets taken into account.
Yeah, I want to add one final note. Like, this is something that the placement team has been talking about for years and years and years. Like, this is the hardest thing to figure out, right? Like, how much is enough? And we went around and around and around in circles of like, okay, do we want to create charts where you have X amount of people in your camp and you need Y amount of interactivity, and some of it has to be scheduled so we know that it's happening, and some of it has to be spontaneous. And I think that amount of guidance and criteria actually sort of gets us to a place where we're limiting creativity and we're limiting your ability to kind of play within the boundaries of what we're doing at Burning Man. And so I think where we sort of settled is something that is still a little vague, because I don't know if we can ever get to an amount of specificity that addresses all your unique situations. But it kind of comes from a more common sense approach of, you know, not a specific number that you have to hit, but more the intention that your camp is bringing to the table and the amount of effort that each of your camp members are contributing to your interactivity. So when we talk about how we consider evaluating your camp at the end of the year, the question that we ask is, could you clearly explain how the total population of your camp contributes to the scale of interactivity and experiences you're planning to bring? And so that story could be, hey, 15 people in our camp, you know, needed to coordinate to like get a truck to drive across country to like pack our stuff and da-da-da-da-da. And so I think that leaves room for that story to play out.
And we have plenty of language in there about celebrating the small or the janky or whatnot, and that it's the intention that matters. And you know, I think of some camps that come from far away and they just, you know, they buy a bunch of ice cream sandwiches in Reno and that's their interactivity. Versus a camp that was next to us last year. These guys came from Argentina and they didn't have, you know, a lot of room, but they filled their suitcases up with yerba mate tea and tea sets, and they did this little tea serving in the traditional cups every day outside. It was, you know, it's like something that they were bringing. And I think if you write a narrative about that, you've just got a suitcase full of yerba mate and some cups, and you've just made something incredible. And it's the, you know, the thought and the intention and the uniqueness behind it that really matters. It doesn't have to be a giant fire-breathing dragon that shoots lasers out its butt. We use that phrase a lot, by the way. I think that was our most used phrase.
So I'm going to move us on because we have a really long stack, and I'm going to ask our group 2 people to kind of try to keep it to 2 people per response, but that was an important one. It's got a lot of tendrils. So our stack is Little Jack, Ereka, Nanako, R1B43OID, Charlie, Insight, Mez, Salvage has a written comment that I'll read out loud, and then Kevin Blake, and now we have Baki. So, and then it's I think given the long stack, I also just want to open us up into if you would like to ask questions or give comments around the draft system proposal that this group presented during the plenary. Just to remind you, this was really about a bunch of things, including you know, how we could shift our system for more accountability, adding new tiers to the standing, peer review, self-evaluation, the quote-unquote Space Force, draft systems of intent and timelines around that. So feel free to plug in your thoughts on that, because that's all in draft right now. So we do want to hear your feedback on that. I'm going to turn it over to Little Jack.
And speaking of lasers out of your butt, well, not really, but I had to go there. I want to go back to the question that was raised earlier about interactivity not at your specific theme camp. I teach classes all over Playa, have for the last decade plus, none of them in Hushville, the village that I'm a member of the organizing committee of, because we don't have the space and my classes are adult in nature and Hushville is not. I am now seeing incentive to not teach, to not bring my gift to Playa, because if I'm spending my time and my effort and my energy teaching my classes in other people's theme camps, that gets them kudos, placement points, what have you, and it dings us because my time is not spent doing scheduled interactivity at my camp. And I'd like to hear how that might be addressed. This is not a support camp. We're still a village of theme camps and individuals. So I'm not saying we're a support camp. I'm saying my gift is not out in the suburbs as, I think it might have been Catnip who placed it, but in core key camps that are well placed, I'm just bringing my gift to other camps.
Hey, Trippi, can I take this one?
Go, Ratchet.
Cool. I think that's a really good question, Old Jack. The way I would frame it is not so much as like getting placement points. There, as Hot Water happens so many other places, so there's no real like, there's no beautiful magical chart that says X, Y, and Z person needs to contribute Z man hours to a camp. Rather, it's the broader overall narrative that you tell about how your theme camp and how your particular gift is elevating the playa. Now, in your example, right, you go and teach classes at other theme camps. So obviously, in your modeling, right, that removes quote unquote placement points. I do think there's an interesting thing to say about that though, because this matters at scale. You talked about Hushville. Well, Hushville is a giant operation, right? So losing one person off of that broader totality doesn't have any real effect. Versus saying you're a 12-person camp and one of your 12 is going off and doing something entirely different. I mean, that you have to balance the scale question in there, I think, when you look at things holistically. And the second thing that I would add to it is that this is also a really interesting thing about communal effort, right? It's, okay, you're not gaining something from doing this, but do you help another camp out by offering that gift and then they can talk about it? And then because that you're there talking about them, they can come over to your camp and present something and you can put it on your duty roster, so to speak, right? It's like the framing of that really matters about how you think about it and not so much of an individualistic race so much, but rather a rising tide lifts all boats.
Anyone from group 2 want to add to that? Nope. Okay. I'm going to move it on to Erica. You're up.
Hello.
Hi there.
Oh, wait. There's 2 Ericas, but
yeah. No. Oh, yeah. Erica.
ERWRECKA.
No, the one air as in like the air.
Oh, that's so funny. That's my nickname. Okay, I'll shut up.
Oh my God, there's 2 of you.
I mean, my name is actually Erica too, so. Who's up?
It's you, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm part of a veteran conclave who is actually seeking placement for the first time. We want to kind of work with like workshops and maybe like a small sound camp kind of thing. I guess just looking for tips for first time placement. Like,
does anyone want to address that briefly? There is a whole session called Ask a Placer that would be definitely a good one to like dive into. I think it's happening simultaneously.
It is, unfortunately, and it doesn't have a second version of it anymore. It got canceled. It would, Erica, it would depend on the size of your camp. Workshops and, you know, doing all the like, and performances, if you guys just want to like kind of do your thing, they're always welcome. People love learning how to fire spin when they're on playa and, you know, having some non-dangerous poi around that people can practice with, which I'm sure you guys all own already because that's how you learned, so that people can figure it out without killing themselves with fire. Is always a good thing, but you just want to make sure that what you're offering within your camp is basically you're involving everybody in your camp to do your interactivity. So like for my theme camp, the way that we do it is everybody has to like sign up for 2 events, and we run each event with like 2 or 3 people. So, you know, if you kind of figure it that way so that you can do more without, because we also we want to make sure that your people can actually go to Burning Man. Just think of it that way. We want people to be involved. They should also be able to go to Burning Man. So like your interactivity should not do something so that none of your people can actually ever not leave, you know, they should be able to leave camp when they want to. So just kind of think of it that way.
Yeah, jumping off with what HepKitten said, the pro tip I always like to give to new camps, this is one of my favorite things to say to new camps, is start small. I think when we all come to Burning Man, we see this incredible, mind-blowing thing, and we just want to be a part of it. And I think a lot of times the desire is to build the biggest and flashiest thing right away. And I think we underestimate the amount of work that goes into that, both in just like the infrastructure, but also in like getting a group of humans to like work together effectively to make that happen. So I think the best theme camps are the ones that start small with big visions, but take their time to get there, and you can build and iterate over time as you go.
And I would encourage folks in the chat to add their advice or thoughts to Erica's questions, because there's so many great answers to that. There is no one right answer. So chime in with your advice. I'm going to turn it over to Nanako.
There we go. Can you hear me? Thank you for pronouncing my name correctly, Trippi. You got it right the last time. I'm Nanako. I'm with Teacher Money. And last year I was a camp survey squad volunteer. So I had a wonderful opportunity to have that experience and go around and engage with so many different camps, gather data. It was a wonderful experience. And so since that time, I have been on my own contemplating some of the issues that we're all discussing here. And I'm happy to speak with whomever if they're interested to hear more. I don't want to go deeply into this contemplation because it'll take up too much time, but I have been looking at it from a unique perspective because my work is in working with energy. So I see things in a very unique way. I'm reading flow and alignment and coherence. So when I look at this situation, like the question that Jason brought up and Allison, and then Erica posted something in the chat, the way that I'm seeing is that the systems that we're all looking to create are really aimed at the fragments. So distilling it down, you're looking at the behavior and looking at how you can manage the behavior. And although I've heard the word intention mentioned, I don't see that that you're really grounding into that, because the way that I see it is that that's foundational, that if we don't start there at that platform, because all action is really informed by your state of being, the substance. So for instance, instead of asking camps about their scheduling and this and that, and did you deliver what you said you were going to deliver, why aren't we asking questions like, how is your camp an expression of your passion? You know, why are you coming to Burning Man? Because Burning Man is a lot of work. So let's drill down and start there at that foundational level of, let's get to know these people, let's get to know their passion and why they're so excited to bring their gift to the playa, and start at that as a foundation instead of coming up into the fragments, the action of the doing, and understanding that all doing, all action is informed from a place within, that it starts from within. And if we can work from that place and build up an alignment, because really what we're looking for is to get all the people who participate in this experience called Burning Man, is we're looking for an alignment. And we all know that there are certain people in camps who are not in alignment with that. So the way that I see it energetically is just, it's a retuning, it's an energetic tuning that happens first from working with the individual people and getting to that core reason of, well, why are you coming to Burning Man? And if that is not in alignment with what we're building as a community, as a whole, then that's where we begin, and then we grow from that place. So that's kind of how I see it. And I'd be curious.
Oh, do you want to ask the question part? Was there a question?
Well, and just so I guess I wanted to see and ask, because I haven't been a part of all the work that you've done, and clearly everyone has invested, you know, their heart and soul in this. So I don't say any of this to disrespect any of that. And I would love to hear, you know, how you guys did fold in that intention part into the process.
So we have included, and they're all additions. there is some specific guiding language around intention. There is some specific guiding language around, we want to see that the interactivity or the gift that you're bringing is somehow organic and is authentically you. That you haven't just gone through the drive-through popsicle store and bought 1,000 popsicles. You know, it's the mate thing that Dilemma was talking about earlier. So we have tried to build a lot of that stuff in. And I think when placement deals with sort of edge cases, a lot of the behind the scenes conversations with camps are about trying to find out what that is. Like, you know, why do you want to come to Burning Man? But the trouble is, if you just put up that question, then the reality is, particularly from the bad actors who are the people you're trying to weed out, you're just going to get a cut and paste of what they think we want to hear. So I think we are trying to go down that step of trying to find authenticity, trying to steer people towards interactivity and gifting, which is somehow organic to them and which they have passion about and that they care about. But there's also sort of some technical stuff that we need to get through too. So I hear you. We had a lot of conversations about that stuff. But, you know, at the end of the day, we have 1,500 plus camps that end up getting camped by ended up getting placed by 17 places. So it does need process. It does need system. And we're trying to add some of that stuff to that process and that system.
I can take one quick more comment from group 2. Otherwise, I'm going to move on.
I can add to that.
Yeah.
Can I add real fast? One of the things that hasn't changed yet is the size of the placement team. And moving forward, we are going to be adding more people to the team so that individual placers can get to know camps better and be able to understand, you know, who they are and those questions you're asking. Why are they doing this? So that's something I think that will be helped by increasing the number of placers.
Thanks, Skidoo. All right, we're going to turn it over to, I think it's Ribzoid. Maybe that's what it's the numbers and letters mean. I might be dense.
Yep, that's it. Ribozoid, however you want. It's basically my last name and zoid, like a robot. So somebody called me that when, like in college, and that's what it became. So believe it or not, I'm actually also with Teacher Money. I'm a lead. I think the things that you guys are doing as far as interactivity and promoting interactivity is awesome. I think that's a huge part of what we do. We brought virtual reality this year or last year and this year. But my question is more towards, like, as a lead, I'm worried about like the balance between not forcing people to work, but giving people how many hours basically should I be asking people to be working. So like we did 2 shifts, but 2 shifts could be how many hours?
Thank you. Who wants to take that one?
I can take it if Hot Water doesn't want to, or Skidoo.
I mean,
yeah, Hot Water, you want to do it?
We talked about this a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's again where it comes back to that concept of meaningful, right? So the language that we used in the criteria is there's no magic formula, but each member of your camp should spend a meaningful amount of their time contributing to camp interactivity. So I think meaningful will mean something different to different people, right? Meaningful to someone who has like 5 different volunteer organizations that they're a part of and has kids and has, you know, whatever, a meaningful amount of time for them is going to be different than someone who is like running the theme camp and like, this is what they do and they're here to do. And I think we intentionally chose that word to leave room for there to be flexibility for camps to interpret that, I think with the highest intention, right? But for camps to interpret what that means for them and apply it.
It was important, the word each member.
We're putting it in your hands. Okay, Charlie is up next.
Hey folks, I'm Charlie from Captain Pump's Raiders. We do gaming on the playa, like geekery, like role-playing games, D&D, that sort of thing. My question is about, I noticed in the draft system you talked about more granularity, and I think I appreciate that there's, you know, kind of different levels there, and that you guys are working on closing the feedback loop for camp placement and performance. What I'm wondering though is, have you considered any sort of systems where you could get a tighter feedback loop, right? Like right now it's like a 1-year cycle. So if let's say I was denied placement, and I need to, you know, up my game, is there something you've considered that would tighten that up so that we would have an idea of what we're doing wrong faster, if that makes sense? So to be more specific, like I see that there's like a focus on an increase in interactivity, and I really appreciate that. But if my camp isn't up to par, I don't have a good sense of what other camps are doing. And so I can't get an idea before I submit my placement questionnaire. What can I do to get better feedback on that, so that, you know, I can be more successful in the future, or I could even fix things in the same year?
Trippi, can I field this? This is like my passion project.
Go for
I
it,
was like, I
Ratchet.
was all ready to jump in.
Yeah, Hep and Catnip and Dilemma also have stuff to say about this too. I think it's a great question, and it gets down to this idea of, at the end of the day, I think we all have an emotional resonance that theme camps provide art and interactivity. Theme camps at the core, though, are a group of people that come together to be a team to deliver X, Y, and Z thing to the middle of the godforsaken desert, right? And those can be high-performing cultures or low-performing cultures or anywhere in between. And the way that you continuously improve yourself is having tight iterative feedback loops. And one thing that we are really conscious about is that right now there's not a lot of good data that comes back to theme camp leads, either from themselves, either through their own eval process, from their peers, or from the org itself. And so you'll see in the broader sort of systems diagram that we sketched out a couple more touch points that help people evaluate. So the first is this idea of a self-evaluation. You know, we really want you to be reflective about the year that you just had, both to think about what you could improve upon, but also to highlight what you did really well. The second area is this idea of peer review. We really want your peers to provide feedback to you in meaningful ways. Both areas that you super excelled at and areas where you think your peers can say that, hey, we saw you do X, Y, and Z thing. It didn't really super affect us, but here's how we think you could do it better. Peer-to-peer feedback, high quality, qualitative peer-to-peer feedback is super, super amazing. And then the third area is how do we present this back to you? That's the most nebulous concept that we have. You'll hear us refer to it sort of as Space Force, for lack of a better term. And we imagine this being an organization that helps collate feedback, not just from your self-eval and from your peer review, but also from other Burning Man departments that you've interacted with, to give you much more granular and nuanced data about what you're excelling at so you can keep improving on those things and your areas of growth. Team, feel free to chime in if I missed something.
I think that was a very holistic answer. So the answer is yes, we know we need to do more of it, and that will only help camps at various stages. And I want to move on because we don't have a lot of time, so I want to get more questions in. And I'm going to move to Insight.
Hi, can you hear me?
We sure can.
Excellent. So I have so many things I could ask, but I'm going to limit it to one. And a comment, which is I love the element of uniqueness that's part of it now, and bringing things, as we've talked about, a lot of folks, the things that people are passionate about and like what they're like inspired to do. And that's been something that our camp has always wanted, has always strived for. This question may be a little bit outside of the scope, so feel free in the interest of time to point me elsewhere. But the thing that we struggle with these unique events is getting people to them. And the what, where, when has been such hit or miss year to year. And like an event that we held 2 years ago was this meditative drawing where we buy Micron pens for everybody, and we had 80 people show up one year. And so the next year we held it again, and we had planned for it, and it didn't end up in the what, where, when, and then we had 2 people show up, and we were left with sort of all of these supplies that we had purchased and like struggled to get people off the street to be interested in this type of event. And so my question is like, is there something that placement is thinking about doing in that space, or at the very least, like, you know, can we find out what's going to get published in the what, where, when ahead of time so we can plan accordingly? You know, what can we do in our uniqueness to just help people know about the stuff that we're doing?
I see Hep has a hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think that we really have a plan. Like, we have a way of knowing what goes into the what, where, when. It's not the information that we're ever given, and I don't know. I think that's a fantastic idea, but I don't know how. Like, that's not really our department. That's something that we can bring the question to level and see what can be done, because I think that's a really important idea. I know that my event that I was doing at my theme camp last year, I was doing Playa Pub Trivia, which was all Burning Man trivia, like pub style, and got 2 people, which you can't really play pub trivia with 2 people. So I feel your pain, because I did all this work for it personally in the middle of all placement to get this, you know, the prizes and the questions and all the rest, and nobody showed up. So my idea this year is we're actually going to post something like physically outside our camp, like paint signs that say like at 2 o'clock we're going to have this, so everybody who walks down your street actually sees that the thing is going to happen. So even if it doesn't get the into the wah, that like people walking by will see and be like, oh, I want to do that, I'll come back for that. So it even if it doesn't get in there, but I really don't have an answer to that question other than that's my idea for my theme camp, is that's what we're planning on doing, is just putting like physical signs outside with our like a schedule that we can kind of update so people can see it when they're walking by.
And I guess what I should have said is that without an ability to get, you know, to publicize these things, you are rewarding the like big parties and bars and sound music type stuff without giving a space for people to do the more smaller passion things.
Yeah, I think it was a lot of camps last year too. Maybe because there was so much art, but
yeah, can I just say, just for clarity though, if my authentic thing is that I really love playing Scrabble with no actual letters, just with, you know, sound cues, and that's my really passionate thing, and I just want to do that, and I do that and no one turns up, no one at placement or at standing is doing a head count of who turns up. Of all the things that matter, that is the least important. So yes, absolutely feel the disappointment in throwing a party and no one turns up, but this is not a popularity contest.
No, but in the long run, I'm less likely to do those events again. Like, I don't want to spend the $300 to buy pens next year if nobody's, well, I already have the pens, but you know what I mean? That like in the long run, it definitely favors events that are doing the things that you know are going to kind of draw big crowds, like bars and music.
Yeah, totally. And I will say just that I'm going to move on to the next question in a second, is you know, the what, where, when group within Burning Man Project has a lot of different touch points, and so we are trying to think about ways we can innovate on the what, where, when, and make it more accessible. I think it's been hard because we've had a consistent budget for it, and obviously the amount of activity and events have grown. And so we made some changes this year to the format. We're experimenting, we're trying new things, and then there's always the online one that slurps up everything. But I saw a comment, I think in the chat, just around, you know, there's still a stigma and a lot of mixed opinions on whether using your phone out there is good, but you can print it. You can make your own schedule and you can print it. So analog is still an option.
One more.
Spacious. Yeah. And then
yeah. So we had the same problem in Anahasana Village, and we've now made our own what, where, when for the past couple of years. Whereas Rockstar Librarian does this for all the different music events. I'd suggest one or two things. One is join up with a village that has a similar vibe to what you're wanting to offer, and create your own what, where, when through that. And or let's create some other more thematically relevant group what, where, when's independently. Thanks.
Nice. Thanks, Spacious. I'm going to go to Mez. Mez, you're up. And then on deck, we have a comment from Salvage, and then after that's going to be Kevin Blake, just so you're prepared. So go to Mez.
Hey everybody, thank you so much. I really appreciate this forum, and by far this has actually been my favorite TCO. So thank you so much for putting this on and keeping it going in the middle of all this craziness. My kind of statement and question goes back to plenary. I was actually very excited to hear about the new tier system that you were talking about that might give us all a little bit more heads up when it comes to our placement standing and how that relates to what it is that we're doing as a camp, and how it can also improve our applications and give us some more insight as to if we are satisfying your criteria for interactivity or not, or other things that might come up during the application process. I hope that with that will also come a method of increased feedback directly from you to any camps that might fall into that watch or probation, that gray area that is yet to be named. Unfortunately, my camp got caught up in that last year, and we're a 13-year camp, and all of a sudden we went into did not get placed, which was very, very heartbreaking for us. We were able to adjust and reapply, and we thank you all very much for accepting our reapplication. We did get placed, but then this year during DGS, we were called out for limited activity again, and we felt like there was a disconnect between the 2 years where we could have really appreciated more feedback as to how exactly it is that we failed to meet that standard, especially since there was a concern that we had an initial application and then a follow-up application. And on that follow-up, both our population number decreased and our interactivity hours that we listed increased. So I think that tier system and the feedback loop from you guys would be fantastic. Our interactivity specifically has to do with a lot of classes, art classes, health and wellness classes, performance arts classes that take up a ton of time and energy to put together. And so it was pretty heartbreaking to hear that we didn't qualify. We also fall into that hybrid camp system where part of our camp produces large scale art. They've done that for the last 3 years now out on Playa. And we also have a mutant art vehicle. So our population is also segmented. So if we're going to be judged based on 60 to 75 people, but I don't have 20 of those people on any given day because they're doing something else, how is that factored in? So I'd love to hear more about how you guys are thinking about those new tier systems specifically towards population and whatnot. And thank you again for letting me speak.
Thanks, Mez. Who wants to take that from our group?
This is Dilemma. I had a thought when she was talking that one of the things I do with camp support is I watch the help desk. And this really informed me when we're talking about giving camps better feedback about how they were doing, because you'd have situations, especially camps around for a long time, and the amount of interactivity they did 10 years ago seemed fine and they did great. And the only feedback they're getting is you're getting placed. And so everyone just assumes, okay, we're doing fine, we're getting placed. And what they don't know is the camps that may have just barely gotten placed. You know, they were like the last ones to get put on the map, and that the placement knew this, but they didn't give them they didn't have the information that they were those by the skin of their teeth. So that's why we're wanting to use these. Hey, you're doing okay enough to be placed, but you're kind of slipping, to give camps an opportunity to course correct before they get to the point where they're denied placement, because we get a lot of tickets in, camp gets denied placement. They've already bought DGS. They already have people that plane tickets. They've already rented the generators and they've paid money for a bunch of things. And now they're waiting until, you know, July to figure out if they're actually going. And it's just a mess. So giving camps more feedback earlier is really important. For the camps that are in the good category, that's probably all they need to know. They're like, oh, we're doing good, you know, maybe some feedback would be good. But the camps that are in the good but could do better, or especially the limited standing, they often get referred to the camp support program, which you heard about today, the camp program. And I'll put a plug in for those folks that if you email campsupport@burningman.org, if they can hook you up with an advisor that can help with some of this and sort of provide that advisement earlier on. You get your evaluations in October, and maybe your evaluation was, hey, you could have done better. We'll start talking to an advisor then, so that when you fill out your PCQ, you have a better one filled out. You're able to fill in those gaps and get the information earlier.
We only have about 15 minutes left, so I'm going to try and move us into rapid fire mode. But because I want to make sure we're covering the new system, the draft system, can someone from group 2 speak to the arms race discussion we had? Because I think it fits nicely with Mez's question about the flip side, essentially. I'm looking at you, Catnip. I'm looking at you, Ratchet.
Yeah, I'm happy to go. Look, one of the broad canvas on which a lot of this discussion took place was on a canvas of scarcity. The practical reality is, while we would like it to be different, there are more camps that want placement than we have space for, and there are more camps that want tickets than we have tickets to give them. So to some extent, and this is an ugly word, this is about rationing. How do you ration those scarce resources? Now, the easiest way to do it is to turn it into a kind of camp beauty contest where, you know, this year, unless you have a fire-breathing dragon and farts popsicles, you're not going to get placed. And then next year, you're probably going to have to bring another dragon because someone else brought another dragon. So we were constantly trying to balance sort of fairness, transparency, and a system that helps and provides resources to better camps with not fueling an arms race, and in particular an arms race that can be won by money. So this then starts intersecting with participation and a whole load of other things. There are no perfect answers to that. There just aren't. And one of the things that I think we tried to do is by anchoring the criteria back to the 10 principles and by anchoring placement to those, and then trying to build in some of that stuff around intention, we've tried to get a balance point between those two things. Is that kind of what you're after, Trippi?
Yeah, thank you for filling in that, because I think that's an important background for folks to have on our conversation. I'm going to move us on. We have about 15 minutes left. I'm going to read a question out from Salvage and quickly answer it, and then we're going to move on to Kevin. So Kevin, you're on deck. Salvage had a question a while ago in the chat. It was, has there been any thought/consideration for encouraging theme camps to more effectively share resources, fuel, energy, kitchen, shower, etc., since our placement next to our neighbors is strictly placed by placement? And I will say there is a group, it's not this group of cultural direction setting, it's group number 4. They're called Placement Process. They've been taking on the question of knowing your neighbors and the map question. And they currently have 2 working proposals that would increase transparency around knowing your neighbors to varying degrees. So they're in progress thinking that through. And yes, we do want theme camps to more effectively share resources, and we know that knowing your neighbors is a key component of that. Currently, you know, camps, when they fill out their questionnaire, they can check a box and say, I'm open to sharing my contact information with my neighbors, and after placement's announced, we'll do kind of an email exchange, you know, if requested around that. So we're looking at how we take that a step or 2 further to help you guys do that more. So I'm going to move on to Kevin.
Is there a timeline for how quickly that will happen prior to the playa?
So I'll say this year is going to be a little bit of a like, we'll see. I mean, it'll be a we'll see in general, right? But it's in the event that BRC happens this year, it would be a TBD. We're figuring out what we can actually accomplish this year without really working on the guts of our database, like I was mentioning earlier, versus something we could roll out better next year that won't be very painful to do on the back end. So that's kind of what we're battling right now.
Okay, thank you.
No straight answer. All right, Kevin, you're up.
Hey, everyone.
Tight. Thanks.
Hey, yeah, I'll be quick. Just a quick thanks to all of you for your time and energy put into this. You continue to do. Much love for all of you. I had a quick question. I was wondering how the new criteria intersects or integrates with the 2030 environmental sustainability roadmap or other environmental initiatives on behalf of a green Burning Man camp like myself and others, or those camps that want to be more green.
I can take this.
Yeah, and I can add to it if I want to. Go.
Cool. So how do I say this in the right way I want to say this? The criteria themselves don't take into account the 2030 sustainability roadmap. What the criteria do take into account is the 10 principles and the principle of leave no trace specifically. While it's not enumerated in this version, a lot of what we've talked about with CDS is that this is not the last time these things are going to be touched for the next 10 years. We are going to have to make tweaks to this process, both at the systems level as well as the criteria level, probably every year going forward for the foreseeable future, to continue to fine tune the systems to get them to the right place that we want to be. So I think from the sustainability roadmap, so little of that was defined while we were doing the bulk of this work back in November and December, that integrating in that was exceptionally premature. I think going down the pipe, I can speak for myself, and I don't speak for the rest of the group too, but I can certainly imagine there being a lot of willingness and flexibility, both from the sort of core philosophical holders of this document, as well as the placement team going forward to integrate those concepts.
Yeah, +1, and just that we acknowledge that we were not the right group to do that. And so that's why cultural direction setting has this nice model of bringing groups together of stakeholders to take a piece of work and, you know, adapt it to the cultural vision. And now in this case, the sustainability roadmap would be something we would want to do next.
Okay.
Great question. Okay, Bucky, you're up next, and then Share Off, you're on deck.
Thank you. I just have a quick question. We're hoping to become a first-time camp, placed camp. A collection of us been burning for many years, and we want to formalize it. And we're looking at something on a smaller scale because we're just a group of about 10 people. When we're choosing a location, how is it best that we choose? We're thinking street location, sector, kind of 8 or 9 o'clock area, but we don't really have a feel or care exactly where we go. Do we need to notate that, or do we just put as basic as it is, street, section, and what desired part of the city we want to be in?
Hep or hot water, Skidoo, quick answer.
That's an easy thing. In the questionnaire, you actually get a choice to put that stuff down. You should decide, look on the website. There's a lot of descriptions of what kind of interactivity we're looking for specific areas of the city, like street, esplanade, large village block, all the rest of it. And then you get 3 choices of which sectors you'd like to choose first. And then you can say, I don't care where I go, like, I'd rather just have like the specific place, like street or plaza or whatever. So there's options in that. Just make sure you click all the links when you're filling out your questionnaire, and they should answer all your questions on the website. And if you don't get the answers, email placement at.
Thank you.
Awesome. We have Share Off, and then Stu, you're on deck.
Hey, this is Sheriff. One of the questions that was in one of the statements coming out of the slide deck, you said that as a camp moves down in standing tiers, they will have access to fewer resources. I don't really follow that. I would have thought that camps that are not in good standing might need more help and more guidance. So what do you really mean by fewer resource access?
It's nasty
DGS.
Code word for DGS tickets and placement.
Ah, okay.
As far as resources to
camp
help remediate, they'll have more. As in, we've talked about theme camp support and stuff like that. So it's not like you get excommunicated from the Holy See. But we're talking specifically about tickets and placement.
Okay. All right, and I know a lot of people are asking about Space Force. It's still very ambiguous, and what exactly is it? Is it a post, during, after, all over, different? If anybody can expand more on that, I think that might be good.
Yeah, there was another question coming up about that, so let's tackle it right now.
Space Force is, the idea is going to be a subgroup of placement.
Space Force!
It's going to be a subgroup of placement that basically is helping us collate more information from more sources, so that your standing is not just based on, right now your standing basically, the information that we get is based on, you're really egregious and that's how you get into not in good standing, but we don't have more information to properly see if people are following through with what they say they're going to do. So we need a group of people who are basically going to focus on that, using resources like Camp Survey Squad, using resources like all these different departments that have interactions with theme camps, getting all that information into one place so that the standings can have a more data-driven, objective result, as opposed to we only know about it when you're really, really bad or really, really good.
And the extra that I'd add to that is that, in a way, when you fill in the placement questionnaire is a set of promises about what you are going to do. And the idea of Space Force is to resource a team to the best they can, figure out whether people actually did what they said they were going to do, and whether they actually were good citizens of Black Rock City. Because, you know, at the moment, all of the focus is on the placement bit of the equation, which at the end of the day is just on a set of promises. And unless we can close the loop and have some resource to find whether those promises were actually delivered on, then it's kind of it's a bit of a bald narrative. I just want to add one thing before closing off on that. That also does not mean that if the giant dragon that farts popsicles got stolen from the car park in Walmart just before the event, that you are permanently cut from the family. You know, we are, and, you know, we say this explicitly. This isn't about kind of punishing people where something went wrong, there was accident, misadventure, etc. It's trying to figure out whether people actually did what they said they were going to do, and if not, why. And if that why comes down to, well, I never really intended to do it, I just wanted the tickets, then they're in a hell of a lot of trouble. If it's about the dragon got stolen, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
And can I add one more thing to that too, Trippi?
Really fast. We only have 4 minutes left.
Totally. Space Force is not designed to be a punitive organization. And I know it could read like that on the surface. You know, Mez asked a great question in the chat, you know, will they be a group to help us like provide feedback? And you should think of Space Force as a concept as the group that helps your theme camp improve. Placement as an organization kind of dies off in the back half of the year after the event when you're doing your post-mortem. Space Force would be that group that exists during then to give you really solid and concrete evidence-based feedback to help you improve and be better and be a resource for you, not a punitive oversight big brother.
And I'll just flash. All this is draft, including the name Space Force, including conceptual. So just got to put that plug in. Okay, I want to ask a question from Stu that got written in, and then we're going to have to wrap up. So I apologize to the folks who didn't get a chance to write in. Please send your questions to placement @ and HepKitten, Hot Water, or Skidoo can filter them to this group. And so the question from Stu was around the statement of intent part of the draft, which we haven't actually touched on. So the question was, you know, kind of about how DGS went down this year. If a camp didn't get full DGS, was that a sign that we weren't doing enough? And if the placement form isn't submitted until after DGS, it seems like the draft proposal of the statement of intent seems to address that concern. So just say a little bit more about what we're trying to solve for there as we close out.
I can go if nobody else wants to. The statement of intent is a large part in what we're working with Group 5, which is the DGS ticketing group, because they need information earlier than the traditional questionnaire has been out and due to actually, because the plan is to have draft plan, I think maybe, I don't know if this is true, is to have DGS tickets be based on what your camp is doing the coming year as opposed to last year. And so part of that process is to get a statement of intent so that you guys can just say, like, we're basically, you know, doing the same level of interactivity, not necessarily the same thing, but the same level of interactivity. We have the same people, we are asking for the same space. Then they have more information that they can properly allocate DGS tickets, as opposed to you're changing your whole camp, you're getting bigger, you're getting smaller, you're whatever, then there's going to be you might have to fill out a questionnaire really early so that they have the right information. So we're just trying to get base information to allocate tickets properly.
And if you want to say double the size of your camp and your Space Force evaluation wasn't so hot, well then, I don't know if you're really going to do what you didn't do what you said you're going to do at 50. So putting another 100 in there, is it going to make a difference?
Yeah, and if you want to discuss that more, so then the next round of breakouts, there's a breakout session from Cultural Direction Setting Group number 5, which was tickets for camps. So you can dig into that deeper. As well, in the next section of breakouts, we have group number 6, the convenience camps and the 10 principles. That's the participation and paying people doc. So if you're interested in that conversation, you can head on to that one. And so I'm going to wrap us up. And one thing that we do at Burning Man headquarters, and we've done throughout cultural direction setting, is we like to end our meetings with appreciations. And so what we're going to do is just take a couple of appreciations. You can just type 1 into the chat, and we'll highlight you, and then we'll close out that way. The thing I'll say before we do that, because it's always nice to end on the high note and not the forum note, is I'm posting in the chat the Theme Camp Symposium feedback form. It's also on the webpage that you got these Zoom links from. It's about the symposium overall, so please fill that out by the end of today, and you'll get reminded again in the next breakout section. So let's end with some appreciations. Maybe someone from group 2 wants to start to model it, and then let's open it up to folks, and you can also chat in there. So go Ratchet.
I want to give appreciations to everyone on group 2 of CDS. This has been a phenomenal process. You know, we've been working together now as a unit for almost 7 months, I think. And I could not have asked for better collaborators, friends, and people to be there and support each other every week. For those of you who haven't been in our weekly meetings, you know, we've met an hour and a half every Wednesday for a long time now. And we've gone through a lot as a unit, not just with what we've made, but also a lot of us have gone through a lot interpersonally, and the group has been a resource and a place to build friendships off of, and that's been really amazing to be that type of micro community. So my thanks to all of you, and this has been such a wonderful process.
Thanks, Ratchet. I have Zhang, Jason, and Mel, and there's lots of folks chatting in their appreciation as well. So go Zhang.
Right on. So first of all, just echoing what was just said, I've been working in group 6, which is around convenience camps and things along that line. And it is really great to see this incredibly solid work being done. I mean, it's just fantastic to have been doing all of our work and keeping our heads down on that. And then, you know, pull our heads up and look at this thing and be like, oh, nice. like it's really, really fantastic. So good job. As a, Zhang did not say it so well. Zhang does say this is okay. Good job. As a quick thing, there's some discussion around the idea of this like tentatively called Space Force thing not being punitive. There is a proposed system for dealing with camps that are problematic, and that's going to be covered in the next breakout session, talking about convenience camps and participation and things like that. So if that piques your curiosity, I suggest that you sit in on that. And any of the folks who are in group 2 who are going, what is that exactly? I suggest you come to that as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Jason and then Mel. Jason.
Hello?
Oh, there you are.
Hi. I've been coming to Burning Man since 1998, and when I first came, the group of people that were coming since the early 90s were saying, oh, we can't shoot guns anymore, we can't set off fireworks anymore, we can't, Burning Man sucks, you know, it's no longer great. And I was coming to it in a culture of people trying to make it happen with people trying to unmake it. And I really appreciate that the work that you guys do as organizers, fighting the good fight to make sure that people can still come to this amazing event where we get to share ideas and share art, share sunrises and sunsets. And so thank you for all your work. And I'm sorry for all the, you know, trouble that I caused being a outspoken voice. So, but I'll keep talking. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Mel. We're finding Mel. Where's Mel?
I think Mel may have left.
Oh, did Mel leave? Okay. Anyone else want to share an appreciation out loud in our last minute? You can just
I'd like to
unmute
say
yourself.
thank you to you guys for continuing to listen to our feedback as well as theme camps, and for having this conversation, because I feel like our camp in particular has felt like we've been in the dark around and not getting any feedback. And so I'm really appreciating that things are finally coming to light and you guys are being a little bit more descriptive about what your vision is for all of this so that we can participate together and make it happen. So thanks.
Thank you, Erica. All right, so just to close us out, I want to say thank you to all of you for participating, for chatting in the chat, for asking your questions and bringing up some really important points. This is what this work is about. It went from 10,000 data points, you know, anonymous, like semi-anonymously, or I think it was entirely anonymously, you know, to the vision group and the vision that came out, you know, to now all these, you know, 9 groups that we've had going, including this group that you've heard from today, and then pulling in all that information. And so it's just been a fantastic experience, and we're not done yet. There's going to be more to come as we continue to roll things out for 2021. And I just want to thank you for how amazing you guys are for making Black Rock City happen, and bringing your all to this. And a special thank you to our group number 2 members who have put a hell of a lot of work into what we've rolled out and will continue to roll out. So thank you, everybody. Snaps, claps, all the things. And woo! And we have a 15-minute break before the next breakout section. You can go back to the website, pick your poison, and we'll see you on the other side. Thanks, everybody.